Hey YouTube, this is Akimo from Liverpool TCG, and today we're going to be talking about the clan selection cards, and we're going to be talking about the sort of clans that we're interested in playing or interested in general, and we're going to give those a ranking from 0 to 10 in standard and premium based on how we think they play out, and based on how their support is. So without further ado, let's get right into it. In Clan Selection 2, Royal Paladin was finally given the dual knights that everybody's been asking for so long, and they were bloody fantastic. They were super generic, which means they can be thrown into any single Royal Paladin deck. For example, Outmile, Sanctuary Guard, Majesty Lord Blaster, and even just normal blasters. And of course, you could go like Soul Saver Dragon, Dual Knight or whatever, or Dual Knight just pure, and the deck will work as intended, and it's really nice to see as well. It has fantastic synergy with the rest of the clan, especially with the grade 1s just being so generic and having unplaced on top draw. It's fantastic, and the grade 2 just giving 10k to whatever like is placed on top of it. It's just very fun. I'm very thankful that Royal Paladin got sort of the support that it deserves after being shafted for an entire year. It's also really good in premium because it's another boss for Crystal Luster to sort of copy, and on top of that, actually gives a crit to Crystal Luster when it's placed on top. So it's just more pressure, guaranteed crit, and on top of that, the triple drive, the sort of like, not really the drive checks or something like that, but the multi-attack combined with the GB3 is just immense for the deck. It's going to provide so much pressure, and it's going to be very difficult for other decks to sort of be able to contend against that or block against it. OTT is one of those clans where if they get a boss or support, if they get a boss or new support, you can almost guarantee or sort of bet about what the boss is going to do, because it's very similar to what everything else does in OTT. So Battle System Fromage does what OTT does best, just drawing cards and manipulating the top card of your deck to make sure you check triggers during your drive checks, which is when you want them. So there's really good pressure. The grade 1s and grade 2 are fantastic because they're just pretty much on-place refunds, especially if you're on a entire Battle Sister deck, which is very much possible with the cards that we have received. And it does, and especially with the grade 2 Trifle having the ability to sort of have a Sentinel Restrict, which is the first in OTT standard, it's very strong, I think, especially when you combine it with Pantone. It's good in premium because of the fact that you could like shove in a bunch of Pantones and then just Ultima Trifle, because that's going to actually do a lot of damage, and it's actually going to cause a lot of like more power. And as well as it just gives the deck multiple win cons, and Battle Sisters are like very strong in premium because of their refunding abilities and the fact that they just gain more power. It provides more pressure, and it's very fun to play as well. So I expect to see more OTT up in the higher or topping after Fromage comes out. In my opinion, with Angel Feather and Clan Selection, the biggest problem with that is that you have to compare Shin Malkuth Melek to everything that's already in the clan. So stuff like Zerakio, Metatron, Malkuth itself, and of course, Gabriel. I think I forgot Kagero, but you know. But the problem with that is that Gabriel is the best deck in the format. And because Gabriel is the best deck in the format, it's incredibly difficult to sort of gauge whether or not Malkuth is pretty good, pretty bad, mediocre, because you end up comparing it to whatever's already in the clan. And yeah, Gabriel was just straight up better than most decks in general. On top of that, the clan selection cards only seem to work with Malkuth, or the Shin Malkuth as well. So it's very so they can't be really thrown into any other deck unless Malkuth and Shin Malkuth are both being run in the deck, because Shin Malkuth of course needs all Malkuth to actually work. So the problem that's why I gave it the score that I did, even though I main Angel Feather. It's just you're better off playing Gabriel in standard. That is, unless your whole local community is begging that you don't play it. Of course, that happens. In premium, the deck is very gimmicky, and I would not suggest trying it out. It's a headache to do, and you'd rather be playing Nokiel or Gabriel 16 crit. It's very inefficient, and you'd rather be using your resources and your sort of brain power into something that might actually work against the top decks in premium right now.
Fiana's not a great card. It's basically a Gancelot in 2021, and Gancelot came back out in 2019, and it has not aged very well. Due to lack of calling, grade 0's opponent's deck, which powers up Fiana and Feme, which the only grade 0 caller is Feme, the numbers you're hitting are very low. Blue is a nice draw and recycle for the deck if the grade 0 condition isn't met, but they're better draw cards from previous sets such as Abyssal Owl and Blackwing Swordbreaker. I would highly recommend looking into other Shadow Paladin playstyles such as PBO, Mordred, Luard, for both standard and premium, as they offer more than what she does. Hopefully V Premium's next wave of support will help her out. Spectral Duke is one of the more interesting cards in the set. First of all, it's able to hit 13k in XL permanently, which makes it very nice to have, as you're able to contend with Force decks. The support cards are also very nice as well. The Grade 1 Vortimir, being able to search for the Grade 2 Vortimir or Spectral Duke himself, boosts the consistency of writing, along with a power up on Retire, which allows your Spectral Duke to hit higher numbers. The Grade 2 Vortimir allows himself to be a 10k on Rearguard of Vanguard, as long as you have the Grade 1 in Soul, which allows you to have the Force numbers on your Rearguards as well. The Countercharge on Retire allows you to use more of your resources, which Spectral Duke does eat a lot of. Along with Percival, Spectral Duke looks like one of the best decks or clans out of the set. However, in Premium, I find it very lackluster, as you want to be striding more, and the Ezel engine is more preferred playstyle to go into.
Now with Genesis, on release, it was a little underwhelming to most of the community. Angelica herself didn't gain power, Angelica herself didn't really give crit. All she really did was marker acceleration and heal at a very awkward time during the game. I feel like if she healed like earlier before the opponent's turn, or even before the opponent's battle phase, I feel like she would have been a little bit better and more incentive to really use it, because you don't really use it at all. And however, the gauge acceleration it's something that Divine Gauge decks needed, and something that it was fantastic for the deck. So Artemis, just being able to like get maybe a plus 60, plus 70 just through Divine Gauge alone is fantastic. And not being able to be targeted, and if you have Yggdrasil not being affected, it turns into a sweeper. It's not restanding, but it's still one attack that's going to deal a lot of damage. So it's one of the really cool things I think about Genesis right now. Gauge acceleration is something that they needed and something that they've received, and I love it. In Premium, it's pretty funny just because of the whole Minerva and stuff like that. It's just more names for Regalia. The Grade 1 especially is fantastic for Premium, just due to the fact that it soul charges, and it also counter charges 1. So that's really, really good. It puts itself in the drop, actually, which is actually where Regalia really wants their names, just so they can put it, just like, instead of really soul charging from deck, they soul charge from soul. So you don't have to really so you can keep the towers in deck, so you can Minerva 7 drive people and go .x with it. So it's really, really cool. It's really, really funny, and if you want to try it out, then we might be doing a deck profile for that later, eventually, when Angelica does come out.
I still believe Draconic Overlord the Cross does what Dauntless does, but better. However, Dauntless does have its merits. Being in a generic restander, regardless of grade, allows you to put on the pressure from the turn you right up. It also allows your older bosses, such as Waterfall Blade Master, turn into restanding vanguards. Or you can go for the double restand plays with Dauntless over Dauntless or Draconic Overlord the Great. Getting additional power and rear guards with drive checking normal units is really nice for Kagero, as it allows Kagero to make up for the lack of rear guard power it gets. However, the support cards do little to nothing for Dauntless Drive Dragon. Dragon Knight He Shot is basically a bar in 2021, and bar was a TD card released back in the starter standard. Break Breath is a nice filter if you retired your opponent's rear guard. It helps you replenish hand for the Dauntless Drive restands. However, in Premium, I'll say once again, Draconic Overlord the Cross outshines it, as it puts on more pressure and has more Overlord synergy in Premium.
For Nubatama in Standards, Hanzo provides a very unique playstyle with the potential to be offensive during your turn and also being defensive during your opponent's. However, its greatest strength is also its greatest weakness, as it needs the original Hanzo to do anything properly. But even with those weaknesses in mind, the deck is very fun to pilot and provides something fresh to Standard. However, in Premium, you have far better options to play, as the final reward of gaining an extra, say 25k shield maximum to your board, is not worth setting up, especially with how Nubatama's strides work, especially the new stride from the Premium Collection 2020. So you're just better off playing a build that actually has strong offensive power, like, say, for example, the vanilla build, rather than being defensive in Premium.
Tachikaze in Standard actually, in my opinion, got some really good support. The grade 1 especially is fantastic just due to the fact they can throw down sort of like a, not an anger blader, but sort of a sweeper down on first turn. And because it throws down a sweeper on first turn, your opponent doesn't expect it, and it's already swinging with gauge and stuff like that. So make sure if you're going first, make sure you put it in the back row though, so that your opponent can't really touch it. So it's really, I think the support's good. Especially the grade 3 boss works really well with Gaia, just due to the fact that you can sort of get more draw power, get into your pieces much easier, and it provides a much better ride so that you can sort of Gaia next turn without having to worry about your hand size, and making sure that all the effects are online because your opponent is also at grade 3. So that's why I think the standard Tachi support is pretty good, because it's very reminiscent of the sort of set wave 1 Tachikaze, where it was more defensive more than offensive and stuff like that, and damage was like, you didn't really care too much about how much damage you can do at once, because sort of Gigarex was pinging one. So it's incredibly fun, I think, and it requires a fair bit of thought, so do try it out. In Premium, I think the grade 1 just makes the deck really just makes the deck faster than it already is. You're still going to be probably going with Anger Blader in Premium. So, and because of that, I guess getting an extra turn for Sweeper is really strong.
We got another form of Shuriken, and oh boy, was it average. Yeah, despite the hype in Facebook groups for how broken this card would become, it didn't turn out that way. Admittedly, it does have some strength. It's very good at what it does, which is taking off power from the opponent's Vanguard, and should be able to consistently take off at least 25,000 power. Not to mention the consistency in rush in this deck is quite nice. Getting a Searcher and a free rush in the form of the grade 1 and grade 2, respectively, is very nice, but this deck is lacking quite a bit. Ironically, despite all the defensive skills, this deck lacks defensive power. That 2 soul you have to use for Shuriken, you would rather use it on your own turn to push. So either you won't have enough soul, or you won't be able to use the defensive skill, as well as the offensive skill. Apart from that, the offensive push is very opponent dependent. So there are many turns where you won't be able to play optimally. It's basically the game doing the combos for you, and sometimes that isn't the best. As for Premium, it was already going to be hard to overtake anything due to Hyuga and Nuedaru being so strong, but it isn't useless as it at least has an alright interaction with the GBA. Granted, it's just a worse version of Yasuye in this regard, but it's still something.
Draconic Kaiser Vermilion the Blood is a very flashy all-in card, however it does suffer from being such a last cannon deck, as you're able to lose the game based on its own skill. Having a field wipe is nice, and having its support card being dedicated to a Searcher and a Superior Ride allows you to accelerate to finish your opponent as fast as possible. So I think it's a very fast deck, but however it's very last cannon, so you have your double-edged sword. However, for Premium, it's not too bad, as your main stride being Stun Burst allows you to go back into the blood, which allows you to utilize his full skill in effect.
The biggest problem with Nova Grappler is the fact that rulings mostly screw it over. So Nova Grappler is just, it's sitting in this really awkward spot where it's like, the effects are pretty good. The effects are good. They're not like, they're not horrible or something like that. Like, they're what you expect from Beast Deity cards. The biggest problem with that though is that how it works is very awkward. I'm not going to get into details about it because it's going to take way too long than the time given by our editor. But a defensive stops the turn, so it's very similar to Nightmare Dolls in that aspect. The only difference that you can choose is just end your turn, just like not actually really drop anything down. But then you're like thrown off balance by it. And Beast Deity don't actually have very good ways to sort of draw cards, or not only draw cards, but more gain power during the turn and stuff like that. So you have to like run other stuff to account for that. Scarlet Bird's not going to be with you at every single minute or every single day, so it's going to be so sometimes you might like swing in and not actually hit the Scarlet Bird, and you could be really stuck. In Premium as well, you have to be very wary about the fact that if you let it hit, which with the opponent does it hit, which they most likely will, you're going to be striding at rest, and striding at rest is very difficult because then you have to run Scarlet Bird, you have to make sure Scarlet Bird stands it. I guess you could try it out as well. But like I think like things like Busted really only work good in the battle phase, and let's not even talk about the alien dude. So it's not as cool as Premium. I am looking forward to Overtrigger with Nova Grappler, however, just due to the fact that it can just like, if someone Drachmas you and you ethics busted them and you hit an over trigger and you kill them and you just kill them in the face, it's just hilarious. So, yeah, that'd be funny.
Galactic Beast Seal is able to work on its own or with older bosses such as Blood Black, Dialina, or Great Dayusha. It offers DP players another toy to play with. Being able to take down power from your opponent based on their circles punishes Mark Acceleration decks really well, as you get to lay on the pressure as you whittle their defenses down. However, it does suffer against Protect 1, as the Protect 1 cards are not on circles, but in hand. Having an extra drive is also a nice pressure to add on, with the power reduction as well. The Grade 1 is a solid searcher, allowing you to get your right targets, and the Grade 2 allows you to have extra draw and extra power reduction as well. In Premium, Galactic Beast Zeal offers itself as either a main right target along with Dialina, or a good rear guard, as it can help you build field, which DP does struggle with. Overall, it's a very solid card for both formats.
Chaosbreaker is back, and it actually delivered. In terms of standard, it's a powerful deck that slows everything else down. Because of how they designed it, it's able to survive against most things well. When first testing this deck, I was worried that Excel decks might be an issue for it, but reducing them from 4 or more attacks to 2 is already doing so much. In the end, if you played mid-G-era Chaosbreaker, you probably already know most of this deck's bad matchups. Granblue, Pale Moon, and anything that naturally counters or works around lock will give you trouble. But this deck still delivers and gives that classic Chaosbreaker feeling. As for Premium, it's pretty interesting. For the longest time I said all I wanted was a Chaosbreaker with a Force marker. And they didn't quite do that. What they did, however, was much better. This new Chaosbreaker's retire ability took the best parts of the retire abilities from Chaosbreaker Crisis and the original Chaosbreaker, where it's not once per turn and also isn't restricted to the end phase only. This, combined with the marker stealing, allows it to do much better than expected and has, in my opinion, put Starvaders back on the Premium map.
Spike Brother is one of those clans in V which I've always been up and down with. I never playtested it and stuff like that, but I've always been interested in playing Spike Brothers in V. And in Premium especially as well, because like the old Hellheart 8 thing, it was so interesting to see, and it was something that I wanted to actually try out at least once in my lifetime. I haven't tried it out yet, but maybe Lucifer will provide me with enough incentive to do so. So we all know that every grade 3 that Spike Brother gets, it's just pretty much Rising Nova support. It's going to help Rising Nova out a lot, and Rising Nova just being a Daimonis on Premium and V Premium and Standard is just really, really helpful. I think with the support cards are really good at moving force markers around, and that's something that I find really, really helpful with the deck. You don't have to rely too much for Dead Heat Bull Spike, and you can focus on getting as many multi-attacks as possible using Lucifer and the all grade 3 dude that most people use anyway. So it's really, really, I think it's pretty strong. I think it's pretty fun to play as well. And in Premium, it's just like the force moving thing is not too like, it doesn't really add on too much in Premium. Spike Brothers is already a pretty strong deck in Premium, so it's not going to add too much on. But the fact that you can swap markers down from Vanguard to Rearguard Circle is actually pretty cool, just to provide more pressure. And again, you're only going to be riding into Rising Nova just for the fact that it gives you 2 markers instead of 1 and 1 of each, which is probably better than anything else going to give you. So Spike Brothers, definitely a tick in my book and one of those fun clans to play. So when Dark Irregulars were revealed, everyone sort of popped off. Everybody was thinking, oh, this is the new dust, we need to get a petition for this. Oh, it just pings 1 damage, all that kind of stuff. It gets crit and stuff like that. Even though the opponent chooses it, if you have 20 soul, your opponent has no choice. The biggest problem with that is that it's slow and standard, and it's very hard to get to 20 soul quickly. Especially because at the point that you get to 20 soul, there's no difference between using that and Shaharot to win the game, or using Hope on Damp or anything like that. So that's the thing with the DIs, that they have so many good options to run that it's very, like it still just seems very lackluster when you compare it to all the other bosses that they have. It's good in Premium, I'd say, but it's a win more kind of card instead of actually being something that the deck really needs. DI is already one of the sort of better decks in Premium, so it doesn't really improve the deck too much. If anything, it sort of like makes it a bit and iffy, because like now everyone's going to be expecting the Castile now. But like, again, 20 soul is much easier to get in Premium than it is in Standard, but it's also the fact that DI doesn't really do very well against damage starvation. You got stuff like can counter charge and stuff like that, but if they leave you at 0 damage and you don't have a Bobo in your hand, and they don't have much draw power, mind you, it's very difficult for them to actually sort of stabilize and control the game. So it's like, it doesn't add too much. It doesn't really add anything to the deck. It's just more of a win more card, and at that point you could have just like killed them with something like Damp or something, or Shaharat, or even Master of Fifth Element. Pale Moon Nightmare Dolls have always suffered due to the fact that if your opponent checks the defensive, then it's incredibly hard for them to like sort of pop off or go over. And of course, while Chelsea tries to mitigate that problem by whatever she calls gives plus 10k, it still only works only if your opponent's in grade 3. So you can't really just rush them 0 to 6 them to death unless they check no triggers, which can happen. But it's very, very like, it's very rare when it does. The deck is very, very fun to play. So being able to just do the whole attack, multi-attack, switch columns, switch cards, do all that kind of stuff, it's really, really fun. And I think it's a good thing to, it's a really good thing for the format. Just having a bunch of fun decks to do. It's, in Premium, nothing really changes too much for it though. Like, Nightmare Dolls weren't really doing too much in Premium, and I don't think the fact that Chelsea or the grade 1's really going to actually change too much. The grade 1 might give you Stride Fodder, which is pretty good, and the grade 2 might give you more options to like sort of add to hand, and I guess the grade 1 counterattaches at the end of turn, but really you want to be killing people in one turn like Songstress does. And Songstress does that just so well that it's just really no point in playing Nightmare Dolls. In that sense, you can also kind of think of it like Angel Feather, where you've got a bunch of options for the clan and stuff like that, and you'll find that some options are better than others, and it's just unfortunate for the sort of subtype or archetype. So, but it's very, very fun, and I do implore you to try it out. It's really, really cool.
Time Reaper Dragon is a direct upgrade from Metallica Phoenix, which boosts Chronojet into a contending deck once again. Being able to do 4 attacks on your first grade 3 turn allows you to put on the pressure before going into the next stage. Also having the freedom to put back or call allows you to play tech cards such as Mellow Amusement's Colossus or fetch a piece you're missing. Lost Gear Doggate is probably one of the best support cards in this set, as it allows you to guarantee your grade 3 ride, along as acting as a grade 3 when discarding for it, which works very well in Premium as well. Steamcomer Zaid is a very niche card for GC, as we don't really focus on retire, and soul isn't too much of an issue. However, in Premium, Time Reaper won't see much play, as Mystery Flare seems to be more favoured over it.
Granblue got, in my opinion, some of the best cards in clan selection. I think Beatrice being like what it is, just the fact that she calls one on place, she provides multi-attack, and she provides more defensive capabilities to the ghosty cards in your hand, and on Guardian Circle, and on your field, is just fantastic, because your opponent's not going to be retiring your ghosty rearguards anyway, because it's Granblue. You're just going to bring them back really quickly and really easily. So it's like, it's very like, they're not going to be wasting resources to do so, unless it's costs like something like Blade Master, in which case they don't really give a shit. But yep, just because of that, I think like it's really, the ghosty deck is really fun to play. I have double critted and killed someone with a Chappie the ghosty, so I'm very proud to say that. And it's really cool, I think, to do. In Premium, Granblue goes up an entire tier in my opinion, just due to the fact that it provides more defensive capabilities. You're going to be running a bunch of ghosty cards anyway, with the Stride Fodder and the heal trigger. You might be running Tommy the Ghosty Brothers if you want more grade 3s in Soul and more selective, making sure you get Beatrice into drop as quickly as possible. So more people are going to be running that as well. And the fact of the matter is that also having that good skeleton cannoneer sort of blow up thing that they've been known to do, it really helps out the deck, and I think you could probably see Granblue being on the higher tiers of Premium if we ever actually get a tier list of Premium.
Continuing on with Bermuda Triangle now, you have really in Standard a fair bit of stuff you can do, even though the grade 1 and 2 are the only generic things. The grade 4, that's only for Prisms. Prisms are still a solid deck for Standard. It's really strong, and you just have a lot of value in the plussing and all that. Alongside the new stuff release, you can have a really powerful rush turn of just solid like 34 plus columns, no matter what, with only 1 force or maybe even 2. So it's really super powerful. And the grade 1 and 2 as well also have synergy with stuff like Ange and Lapina to some sort of an extent, because the grade 2 is a generic booster essentially. Which, you can never go wrong with that. A free 10k booster is always a solid thing. But that's really all there is for the Standard Bermuda from the set. It doesn't really support Melody or anything else like that. So now off to Premium.
In Premium, the support for Bermuda Triangle really helps Highlander more than any other deck. Poor Prisms, because the bind mechanic doesn't really work with the ult support, so it's really difficult to work around with that. However, Nectaria can be used in Highlander in order to throw out your copies of Reindeer so they can actually use Reindeer in Highlander. So that's really cool. And the grade 1 is really good as well. It's just putting triggers back into the deck and just really helping out. So Premium is alright. Don't expect it to be fantastic though.
Valios is essentially an evolution of Revon, as along with reducing your opponent's Vanguard's power, it now comes with locking your opponent's Vanguard power when they're very, very high, which puts on a lot of pressure once your opponent is on a high damage threshold, as they can't rely on trigger power to help them guard against your onslaught of attacks. Also, with the ability to revive 5 units, which is a homage to Megiddo, for the cost of discarding the same name, allows you to recover a board you may have lost or couldn't replenish due to a low hand, along with destroying your markers, which seems very bad. However, in a Valios dedicated deck, which doesn't have markers, it won't be much of a problem. His rearguard swapping skill is also very nice. It allows you to multi-attack once your opponent's Vanguard is weakened. The grade 1, being a searcher, allows you to have the consistency to search your blue wave cards, which will get better in future support, along with being a 13k attacker or booster, which allows you to hit your opponent's weakened Vanguard as well. The grade 2 allows you to multi-attack, however his Vanguard skill is restricted to blue waves only, so you have to look for more blue wave cards in the future. However, in Premium, Valios does have a blue wave name, which allows you to use a lot of the old G-era support cards. However, he suffers not having a marker, which does put your offensive capabilities down.
When the Megacolony boss was announced or revealed, it was very, very interesting to see the ramifications for all the kinds of rulings and stuff like that, especially with Shin Maku coming out the next week and just making things even more difficult for Vanguard players. The deck is very, very gimmicky, and it's not as... It doesn't really improve much for Ghidorah. Ghidorah is really probably the better Megacolony deck no matter what, and the grade 3 really helps Ghidorah. The grade 3 support card really helps Ghidorah. The grade 1 support card is really good too, so it just helps out the deck and everything. So it doesn't really get MC help. Doesn't really give MC any help. In Premium, again, Megacolony really focuses on having this sort of Zoa turn and being able to sort of grind out then, and in which case this grade 3 doesn't really help out much. The grade 1s and grade 3, the grade 1s helps a bit, and the grade 3 support card doesn't really help out much either. So it doesn't really improve anything for Megacolony and Premium, which is unfortunate, but that's the way the wheel turns.
It's Great Nature time. To start it off, I'm giving Standard a score of 7 out of 10. It's good. Multi-attacking is very powerful in the Standard format, and this is no exception. From first glance, even with its support grade 1 card, I thought it would have a big counterblast problem with Hamian being counterblast 2. But after further testing, it's alright, since the grade 1 actually gives really good countercharging and delivers a lot more than expected. It can honestly win you games, and it is a really fun deck to pilot. The only downside of this is the power it gives. It doesn't give any, which isn't great, and if your opponent hits a defensive trigger, it really isn't good to be in the situation, and it can cost you a lot of attacks. Onto Premium. To sum it up, I don't think it's worth playing Hamian. Unlike a lot of other Great Nature grade 3s, this card isn't when placed, which is a massive deal, and especially when you're striding over it anyways. My advice is just to play the Big Belly or Isabel engine, as it works a lot smoother and a lot better.
Alright, so continuing on with Nectar, there's really not that much to talk about in Standard. It's a pretty solid deck. You have Stan Peony, just being reverse Katrina, as most people would say. You have cards like Craig and Dream Shower to support the tokens that you called before and after, to just make your comms a bit bigger and overall consistent, which is extremely nice for the deck, and also create a decent first right turn going first. And then you also have, decks like Asha, which can use the support pretty well, because the grade 2 is a generic filter essentially, and the grade 1 is just a free bounce, and they can go into any other token deck. So it's really solid support for Standard overall, which is why it's, a mid-tier deck. You might win a local too if you can sack hard enough. And now continuing on with Premium, you have Standard Peony vanilla engine. You slap that in, you slap the Cyclones, you slap the Sarzine, you slap the Mohawk, you slap everything in, slap the Tempest Spears, and oh my god, look at that. You're getting some pretty big columns without even having Force. And when you get that Force too, baby, woo! You don't even need to run Craig or Dream Shower, because you do it all yourself, and you don't even need Strides, you only need Cyclone. And
There's no really any other premium deck. I'm sorry about that, but yeah. So it's a pretty solid premium deck as well, carried very hard by the vanilla engine. That creates this powerful rush for it.
We hope you enjoyed the entirety of the video, and as always, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more Combat Vanguard information videos, and just more videos in general, stuff like that. We're also going to be doing a lot of Digimon stuff, so do keep an eye on that as well. So, that's it. Peace.